Thank you for being here today. I hope this story gives you a quiet moment to relax and enjoy something meaningful. If you like gentle science fiction with heart, please consider liking, commenting, subscribing, and sharing it with someone who may enjoy it too. Now, let us begin a story about a cold village, a stranger with very little to offer, and a kind of help people do not always recognize at first. The village that thought the human was too poor to help on the outer colony world of Nerith, far beyond the warm ports of Earth. The village of Tavern Hollow sat in a frozen valley between two dead mining ridges. Its houses were low against the wind, with stone walls, patched metal roofs, and narrow windows covered by woven frost screens. The people there did not waste light. They did not waste heat. They did not waste hope, because hope had become the most expensive thing left. Garrett Hale reached the village gate near dusk, pulling a small cargo cart through knee-deep gray snow. He was a human mechanic from Earth, though nothing about him looked official or impressive. His coat was old. His gloves had been stitched in 3 different places. His boots had been repaired with wire and sealant, and the cart behind him leaned to one side with a damaged axle. At the gate, 3 tavern women watched him from behind a sheet of wind-scored metal. Their skin was pale blue under the cold, with faint silver markings along their cheekbones. Their eyes were wide and dark, shaped for the long, dim seasons of Nerith. One of them held a spear that looked older than she was. Another held a child under her coat. Garrett stopped outside the gate and raised both hands so they could see he carried no weapon. "My name is Garrett Hale," he said. "I'm a mechanic from Earth. My cart broke half a mile back, then broke again here. I'm looking for a place to sleep and a bowl of soup. I could trade repair work." The woman with the spear narrowed her eyes. "We have no work for strangers." Garrett looked past her into the village. He saw dim windows, weak smoke, and people moving slowly to save strength. He saw no adult men, except one old figure carrying firewood with a bent back. Mostly he saw women, elders, and children. Too many children watched him from doorways with the careful silence of the hungry. "I understand," Garrett said. "Then I will move on when the wind drops." "It will not drop," the woman said. Before Garrett could answer, a door opened near the center of the village. A young tavern woman stepped out carrying a folded length of heavy cloth. She moved with quiet control, but her face was tired in a way that had nothing to do with one bad day. A long scarf covered her shoulders, woven with dark lines that twisted into circles and branches. Garrett noticed the pattern because he noticed anything that repeated with purpose. The spear woman turned toward her. "Mira." The young woman stopped beside the gate. "Who is he?" "A human who says he can fix things." Mira then looked at Garrett as if she had heard that sentence before and disliked every memory attached to it. "We have seen rich men fail here," she said. "What does a poor man expect to repair?" Garrett did not answer quickly. He had learned that pride wasted heat. "Whatever is broken enough to be worth trying," he said. Myra's gaze moved over his coat, his cart, and his patched boots. "You should leave before dark." A second door slammed open behind her. An older tavern woman stumbled into the lane, panic breaking her careful steps. "The children's heater stopped," she called. "The back room is cold. Lyra's boy is coughing again." The village changed at once. Faces turned. Mothers pulled children closer. Myra's jaw tightened, and the spear woman cursed under her breath. Garrett listened. The sound came from a stone building near the well. It was a low pipe vibration, uneven and trapped. Not dead. Jammed. He pointed toward the building. "That heater still has return pressure." Mira looked back at him. "You heard that from here?" "I heard enough to ask if I may look." "No," said an elder from the lane. She was Sovereign, the village head, with white lines across her brow and a voice worn down by hard decisions. "That heater serves the sick children. We do not let a stranger touch it." Garrett nodded. "Fair." The coughing rose again, thin and sharp through the cold. The mother who had spoken at the gate shut her eyes. Garrett lowered his hands. "If I fail, I will remove every part one touch and leave it no worse. If I am right, the room gets heat. I need a bowl of warm water, a thin strip of metal, and 10 minutes. Myra's eyes hardened. "And what do you want after?" "A bowl of soup," Garrett said. "If there is enough." The village looked at Sovereign. The old leader looked at the sick house, then at the child under the woman's coat, then at Garrett's empty cart. 10 minutes, she said. Mira, watch his hands. Inside the children's house, the air had the bitter smell of cold stone and old medicine. 3 children lay under layered cloth. One boy shook, so hard his teeth clicked. Garrett knelt by the heater and placed his palm near the lower pipe, not touching it first. He listened again, then opened his tool roll. Mira stood close enough to stop him. If you break it, you leave before dawn. If I break it, you will not need to tell me. The jam part was cheap company work mounted over an older heater body. Garrett had seen that trick in worker camps. The new part failed fast, but only in ways that forced people to buy another. He pulled one of his own cart braces free, a narrow strip of treated metal that helped hold the damaged axle in place. Mira noticed. Is that from your cart? Yes. Do you need it? Yes. He shaped the strip with pliers, slid it behind the stuck pin, and turned it slowly. The first twist did nothing. The second made the pipe groan. Mira held her breath. Garrett adjusted the angle and tapped once, gently, as if waking something old. Warm air coughed through the vent. The room did not become comfortable. It became survivable. That was enough. The shaking boy slowly stopped trembling. His mother put both hands over her mouth and cried without sound. Garrett sat back on his heels. The repair had cost him a cart brace, and most of the strength left in his fingers. Sava Rin entered and touched the vent. Her face did not soften, but her eyes changed. You fixed one room, she said. One room needed fixing, Garrett replied. They gave him soup that night, thin and gray but hot. He ate half of it in the abandoned repair shed and left the rest beside the door of an old man with one hand. He did not know that Mira saw him do it from across the lane. The next morning before sunrise, Garrett repaired the village water filter. He found a company ring hidden inside the flow chamber. The ring made the filter clog faster and wear down sooner. It was a small cruelty, the kind designed by someone who never had to drink the water afterward. When he carried the cleaned filter back, Mira stood in the doorway of the weaving house. Why did you give away half your soup? She asked. Garrett wiped his hands. He needed it. So did you? Yes. She studied him in silence. The scarf around her shoulders shifted in the wind, and the dark pattern caught Garrett's eye again. It was not random. Lines curved toward small knots, then away into branching paths. Mira noticed his gaze and pulled the scarf tighter. Do not look at that like salvage, she said. I was not. Everyone says that before they take something. Garrett stepped back. Then I will not ask. That answer seemed to bother her more than an argument would have. By noon, Garrett had earned a corner in the shed for one more night. Most villagers still avoided him. A father named Bryn Ara, thin and sharp-eyed, told others not to trust him. Bryn had 2 children and the look of a man who measured every risk by their faces. He fixed a heater, Bryn said near the well. That does not make him shelter. That does not make him food. That does not make him fuel. Garrett heard that too. He kept working. He knew Bryn was not wrong. One warm room was not salvation. It was only a beginning. But when night fell, the children in that room slept. The company ship arrived the next morning with clean engines and polished landing feet. It touched down outside Tavern Hollow, as if the snow itself had been cleared for it. The words Vera Cold Works were painted across its side in pale blue letters. Garrett stood near the water pump with a cracked seal in his hand. Every villager stopped moving. Orvin Cade stepped from the ship wearing a heated coat without a single patch. He was Tavern, like the villagers, but his skin had the smooth color of someone who had not been sleeping in freezing rooms. 2 contract guards followed him. They carried no rifles in their hands, because the weapons were mounted on their shoulders and pointed wherever they looked. Sava Rin walked to meet him. Mira stood behind her. Garrett stayed near the pump. Orvin smiled with professional sadness. I regret the timing. Tavern Hollow has exceeded its fuel debt allowance again. Sava's face became stone. The storm is 3 days out, which is why I came personally. Orvin lifted a slate and let the village see the glowing contract. Vera Cold Works is prepared to extend emergency heat credit. In exchange, 12 suitable youths will enter a labor rotation for 1 year at the eastern ice mines. A sound moved through the village, not quite a cry and not quite a breath. Bryn Ara pushed forward. 12? You said 6 last winter. Last winter the debt was smaller. They're children. Orvin's smile remained. They're near working age under the Reconstruction Charter. Myra's hands closed around the cloth she carried. Garrett saw it. He also saw the heat crate behind Orvin, open just enough for warm vapor to curl into the freezing air. Orvin had brought warmth and placed it where every mother could see it. That was not a mistake. That was the weapon. Garrett walked closer. May I see the charter? Orvin looked at him as if noticing dirt on a clean floor. And you are? Garrett Hale. Mechanic. Human. Yes. A licensed colonial heat engineer? No. Then no. Garrett nodded once and looked at Sava. The main heat lines are locked from outside. Orvin's smile thinned. The system is under company maintenance authority. That is not maintenance. That is control over whether people stay warm. A guard shifted. Mira looked sharply at Garrett, warning him without words. Orvin turned to the villagers. This is why strangers are dangerous. They do not understand what this village has agreed to. Vera Coldworks has kept this settlement alive through 17 hard seasons. Garrett looked at the heat crate again, alive enough to keep owing. The guard took one step. Sava raised her hand. Enough. Orvin gave the contract to Sava. 3 days. After that, the emergency offer expires. Without company fuel, the storm will make this valley uninhabitable. He boarded the ship and left the heat crate behind for a moment. It stayed unopened, just long enough for everyone to feel what they could not have. After the ship lifted, the village broke into argument. Some wanted to sign at once. Some wanted to wait. Others said there was nothing to discuss. A child sent to the mines might still live. A child left here without heat might not. No one liked thinking that way, but fear made cruel thoughts sound practical. Garrett stayed quiet until Sava asked him what he had seen. The water filter was rigged to fail, he said. The heater was built over an older line. The locks are not there to protect you. They're there to keep you buying heat. Bryn stepped close. And what do you offer? Your broken cart. Garrett met his eyes. Right now, I offer a list. Bryn laughed once, without humor. Garrett pointed to the water pump. Clean water lowers fever. Repaired small heaters reduce the strain on everything else. Better insulation keeps children alive longer if heat drops. Old pipes under this village still have pressure. If there is another source, we look for it before you sign away 12 children. Bryn's anger shook. You do not know our children. No, Garrett said, but I know companies that count them as units. Mira looked away. Later in the weaving house, she found Garrett studying a broken loom joint, but not touching it. The room smelled of old fiber, cold ash, and dried leaves. Bundles of pale thread hung from the beams. The great loom in the center had been silent for months. That is my mother's, Mira said. Garrett stepped back. I saw the pivot was cracked. I did not touch it. Because you respect it? Because it is yours. She gave a bitter smile. My brother Talon said the company would respect our contract. He signed to buy medicine for our mother. He wrote twice from the mines, then never again. They said records were lost in an accident. Garrett listened. Myra's voice tightened. Every promise here has a cost hidden inside it. A heater, a filter, a bowl of soup. One day someone asked for the price. I'm sorry about your brother. Do not be sorry. Be honest. Garrett looked at the loom. Then I will be honest. I do not know if I can save this village. I know the company wants you to believe no other choice exists. I also know no machine is worth trusting just because someone rich says it is. Mira held his gaze. And if your hope is another trap? Garrett answered quietly. Then you should be the first to break it. For the first time, Mira had no ready reply. That evening, Garrett mapped the village by walking it. Sava sent 2 children to follow him, partly to help and partly to watch. He found old vents blocked under snow and a sealed wall on the north side. He also found 3 pump housings older than company metal and symbols carved near an abandoned drying house. They looked familiar, but he could not place them. At the repair shed, he spread parts across a workbench. Bren Ara stood outside with folded arms. You are making them believe, Bren said. No, I am giving them work. That is worse. Work feels like hope. Garrett looked at him. What would you do? Bren's mouth twisted. I would sign. I would hate myself and sign. My daughter breathing into mine is better than her not breathing here. Garrett did not answer at once. He respected fear when fear had a child's face. If you sign, he said, they will come back next winter for 12 more. Bren's eyes filled with rage because he knew it. Then fix winter, human. Garrett watched him walk away. He looked down at his hands, cracked from cold and work. He had fixed 100 dying systems in places no one important remembered. Sometimes he had been too late. Sometimes the machine had failed again after he left. Sometimes people had thanked him like he had saved them, when he knew he had only bought them one more day. The clue came from Myra's scarf. Garrett was in the weaving house repairing the cracked loom pivot with a shaped brass sleeve. Myra had allowed him inside only after making him wash his hands and promise not to move anything without asking. He took both conditions seriously. The scarf lay across a table beside them. Dark lines crossed the silver thread, gathered into knots, curved away, and returned in quiet loops. To Tavern Hollow, it was mourning cloth. It held grief, family, and promises spoken over the dead. To Myra, it was her mother, Talon, and everything her family had lost. But Garrett had seen settlements survive without written records. He had seen workers hide water routes in songs, repair marks in door frames, and pressure warnings in children's counting games. The scarf had that same kind of logic. The knots were too steady to be decoration. The branches moved like routes. The loops turned away from blocked places and came back toward the center, as if the cloth remembered where feet were meant to go. Garrett did not see salvage. He saw tradition carrying a map because paper could burn and company records could vanish. May I ask a question about the pattern? Garrett said. Myra's hand moved to the cloth. Carefully. Is there an old stone well east of the children's house? Her expression changed. There was. It is filled now. Garrett pointed, but did not touch the cloth. This knot sits east of the central spiral. If the spiral is the old heat house, the knot could mark that well. Myra stared at him. It is a mourning pattern. Yes, Garrett said, but maybe mourning was not all it carried. Sava joined them after Myra sent for her. The old leader looked at the scarf for a long time. My grandmother said the old weavers stored winter inside cloth, Sava said. I thought it was a saying. Myra looked down at the scarf, as if it had become heavier in her hands. My mother wore this when Talon left, she whispered. She said it was all she could still carry. Garrett kept his voice low. Maybe she was carrying more than sorrow. Wells, vents, old heat routes, sealed passages. Not as a machine plan, but as a memory people could keep after records were gone. Sava touched one dark line with a trembling finger. Old weavers did not only make blankets, she said. They remembered what kept people alive. Myra held the scarf with both hands. Her mother had not only left grief behind, she had left the way home. For the first time, Myra understood that the cloth had not been asking her to mourn forever. It had been waiting for the village to remember. Garrett pointed to the border. This line turns north, then stops hard. Is there a sealed wall there? Myra whispered. The company sealed it after the war. They went to the old well first. Bren followed with 3 others, muttering that they were wasting daylight. The snow there had frozen into a hard skin. Garrett dug until his shoulders burned. Myra worked beside him. At first the villagers watched. Then one child brought a small shovel. Then an elder with shaking hands brushed ice from the stone rim. Under the packed snow lay a metal cover, older than company steel. Inside its edge was a carved symbol that matched the scarf. No one laughed after that. The drying house was next. It had once been used to cure the fiber Myra wove, but now it was a dark shell with frozen beams. Garrett found a service hatch beneath broken boards. Warmth breathed from the crack, so faint that only the frost pattern revealed it. Myra knelt beside him. It is still alive. Something under it is. The north wall was more dangerous. A company seal blinked red beside the metal plate. Garrett did not open it. He studied the seal, then the scarf, then the ground. They did not build this wall, he said. They covered what was behind it. Sava's voice lowered. What are you saying? I think your village had its own heat system before Vera Coldworks arrived. It was built to warm the whole settlement. The company locked it, then sold your own heat back to you. Bryn shook his head. If that were true, why would no one know? For a moment, no one answered. Then Sava looked toward the burned edge of the old records hall, a roofless stone shell near the center lane. After the war, Sava said slowly, many records were gone. Builders died. Some were taken for reconstruction labor. Some came home too old to climb the tunnels. Her voice weakened, not from age, but from recognition. I believe what they told us because I was tired. Because everyone was tired. Mira looked down at the scarf. And my mother tried to keep the truth, she said. I carried it for years without understanding it. Garrett nodded. A machine can be locked in one day. A village memory has to be starved for years. Sava's fingers tightened on her cane, and the scar survived because they thought it was only mourning cloth. Yes, Garrett said. They did not see it as a record because it did not look like one. Mira looked at the company seal on the wall. They did not only take heat, she said. They took memory. They entered the old drying house near midnight. Garrett brought a lantern, Mira brought the scarf, and Sava brought the authority to stop them if the risk became too high. Beneath the hatch, steps led down into a narrow service tunnel. The air grew warmer by tiny degrees. At the bottom, Garrett found the old heat works. They ran under Tavern Hollow like buried roots. Thick, dark, mineral-stained lines. Old tavern craft, not company work. Some sections were still faintly warm. Others were cold, blocked, or cut. At the main control, Garrett saw where a steadying piece had been removed and replaced by a company lock. That missing piece mattered. If the old system woke too fast, the tunnel could shake apart. The lock did something else. It held the heat closed, and it still remembered who had closed it. Garrett's jaw tightened. Mira touched the old pipe with 2 fingers. They told us the system died during the war. Garrett examined the lock. It was made quiet. That is different. Sava leaned on her cane. For a moment, she looked older than the village. How many winters did we pay them for heat that was already under us? No one answered. Garrett studied the old control. If I open this wrong, the tunnel could break. If I open it right, we still need something to keep it steady. Without that piece, this may be our last chance and our last mistake. Can you make it safe? Mira asked. Garrett thought of his cart outside the repair shed. The little balancing core under its frame was the only reason the damaged axle held underweight. Without it, he could not travel far. The cart was not just transport. It was his workshop, his bed, his savings, and every mile of leaving he had left. Yes, he said. Mira heard the weight in that word. What does it cost? Garrett did not lie. My cart. She looked at him for a long time. Then do not pretend it costs nothing. I was not going to. He removed the balancing core before dawn. He worked alone because he did not want anyone watching him take apart the closest thing he had to a home. When the last bolt came free, the cart sagged against the shed wall. Mira found him there, holding the core in both hands. You should have told us, she said. You had enough to carry. So did you? Garrett gave a tired half-smile. I have carried worse. Mira did not smile back. That is not a reason to carry alone. For the first time since he arrived, Garrett looked away first. The storm warning bell rang 2 days before the cold front hit the valley. It was not a loud bell, because Tavern Hollow had no energy to waste on loud warnings. It was a hollow metal tone struck 3 times from the old tower. Garrett stood in the repair shed with Sava, Mira, Bryn, and nearly every person strong enough to stand. The table before him held a rough map drawn from the scarf pattern and the tunnels they had confirmed. It was not beautiful. It was useful. We cannot wake the whole system, Garrett said. We wake enough to feed 3 shelters, the water pump, and the children's house. If it holds, we expand after the storm. Bryn folded his arms. And if it does not hold, then we still need blankets, clean water, and smaller heaters repaired. So we do all of it. People looked exhausted before the work even began. Garrett pointed to the parts laid out on the table. Sava, I need elders who remember old buildings. Mira, I need the looms running. Any cloth that holds heat goes to children and elders first. Bren, I need people who can carry pipe sections. Not brave people. Careful people. Bren stared. You want me on your side? No. I want you where your fear will make you check every connection twice. A few villagers looked at Bren. He did not like that Garrett understood him, but he took the list. Garrett turned to an old woman named Rel, whose hands trembled when she lifted them. Can you sort these bolts by groove? Rel looked ashamed. My eyes are not good enough for small marks anymore. I'm not asking your eyes, Garrett said. I'm asking your fingers. The old woman frowned at him. Garrett placed 3 bolts in her palm. You worked weaving counts for years, did you not? Rel's mouth softened. Longer than you have been alive. Then you know grooves, knots, and patterns better than most people know faces. Rel closed her fingers around the bolts. After a moment, she separated them by touch. Garrett nodded. Good. I need that. A boy no older than 12 raised his hand. What can I do? Listen for the 3 bells in the lower passage. If one rings twice, you run to Mira. If it rings once, you run to me. No guessing. The boy nodded with sudden importance. In the weaving house, Mira brought the old loom back to life. Its first movement was ugly, a groan and a snap. The left tension arm jammed. The women around her froze. Mira almost called for Garrett, but he was below ground, fitting the piece from his cart. She heard his voice from memory, not telling her what to do, only asking what the machine was trying to do. She bent close, felt the strain in the frame, and found the cracked tooth in the guide wheel. She replaced it with a shaped scrap from a broken heater cover, tightened the sleeve Garrett had made, and set the counterweight again. The loom moved. Mira wove the old pattern with new layers. Silver heat thread. Thin strips of metal from dead company pins. Local frost reed, cleaned and twisted. It was not the cloth her mother had made. It was not only tradition. It was survival. By evening, the first child wore a stiff, shining heat wrap. The child stopped shivering after a few minutes. Bren saw it happen to his daughter. His face changed, but not enough to become trust. He had wanted a sign because he thought his child alive in a mine was better than his child frozen at home. But now he had seen one more possibility, small and fragile, made by the hands of his own village. Then Orvin Cade returned. His ship landed closer this time, scattering snow into the village lanes. The heat crate came with him. So did 6 contract guards. Garrett climbed from the tunnel as Orvin entered the square. Mr. Hale, Orvin said, you have been busy. Garrett wiped black mineral grit from his hands. So have you. Orvin lifted a company slate. You are trespassing inside Vera Coldworks heat infrastructure. You have damaged company seals and encouraged breach of contract. Sava stepped forward. Those pipes were under our village before your company existed here. Your village was reconstructed under company authority after the war. All survival infrastructure falls under our maintenance charter. Maintenance, Mira said. You locked it and sold us heat. Orvin turned the slate toward the crowd. Careful. Hope makes poor people careless. That sentence landed hard because it was aimed at everyone. He gestured. The guards opened the heat crate. Warm vapor rolled out, soft and golden in the cold air. Children stared. Mothers stared. Bren stared at his daughter, wrapped in Myra's new cloth, then at the open crate. Orvin's voice became gentle. Give me the human. Sign the youth labor rotation. I will unlock enough company heat for the storm. No one needs to suffer because a stranger dislikes contracts. The village began to fracture. A woman said they could not risk the children. Another said the company would take them anyway. Bren stepped towards Sava, shaking with fury and fear. Garrett raised a hand. Do not make the choice about me. Everyone turned. He looked from face to face, then at the children near the shelter door. Do not make this about whether I am worth saving. I am one man. Choose whether your children belong to them. The square went silent except for the wind. Orvin laughed softly. That is a noble sentence from someone who can leave. Mira moved before Garrett could answer. She crossed the square and stood between Orvin and the weaving house. He cannot leave, she said. He gave his card to our heat system. People looked at Garrett. He said nothing. Mira lifted the scarf from her shoulders. My mother carried the map of our village in this cloth. Her mother carried it before her. Your company did not save Tavern Hollow. You made us forget what already kept us alive. Orvin's smile vanished. That cloth is not evidence. No, Mira said. It is memory. The evidence is under our feet. The storm hit before dawn. The cold came like a weight pressed over the valley. It pushed through cracks, bent old shutters, and made every breath hurt. The sky disappeared behind white motion. The village bell rang once, then froze silent. Garrett was already underground. The chamber beneath the old drying house was half blocked by a collapse in the west wall. Mineral ice hung from the ceiling. The core from Garrett's cart was fixed against the old heat control, trembling under pressure. Myra's heat cloth wrapped the place where warmth was escaping, held in place by wire and the hands of two villagers who could barely feel their fingers. Below ground, Garrett still needed time. Above ground, the village had to hold the doors, keep the shelters alive, and protect the proof long enough for the old system to wake. Garrett turned the first wheel. It moved an inch, then stuck. A deep groan moved through the wall. "Stop," asked the boy assigned to the lower bell. His voice shook. "Not yet," Garrett said. "Tell Mira the first path is holding." The boy ran. Garrett braced his shoulder against the wheel and turned again. Pain cut through his hands as cold metal bit through the gloves. The wheel shifted. Somewhere deep under the village, warmth began to move. Then the piece from his cart slipped. Garrett lunged and caught it before it tore free. If it came loose, the last chance to control the heat could tear apart with it. The impact drove him to one knee. Hot pain flashed up his arm. He tightened the brace with fingers that no longer worked well. While Garrett fought below, Mira kept the shelters alive above. She checked the children's wraps. She checked the shelter walls. She checked the copied proof from her mother's scarf. Every wrap tied across a weak wall held in a little more heat. Every message carried by a child through the lower passage bought another minute. Every door held by tired villagers gave the old system one more chance. Garrett was below the village, turning the old control, but he was not saving Tavern Hollow alone. He was only opening what the village had carried, protected, remembered, and finally chosen to use again. Mira reached the tunnel mouth. Breathless. The north shelter is losing heat. Wrap the weak place in the wall, not the whole line, Garrett said. That is where the warmth is dying. She nodded and turned to go. Mira. She looked back. If the old control breaks, get them out. Her eyes hardened. Open it correctly. And she was gone. Above ground, Orvin's guards tried to force their way into the weaving house. Sava and Bryn stood with a line of villagers in front of the entrance. They had spears, tools, pipe sections, and no real chance in a clean fight. But the storm made nothing clean. Orvin understood the danger before most of the village did. If the old heatworks woke and the lock record survived, Vera Coldworks would not lose one argument. It would lose the lie that made Tavern Hollow pay. He could not allow that proof to survive outside the village. He held the open heat crate beside the shelter. "You are letting children freeze for pride," he told Sava. Bryn looked at the crate. His daughter was inside the shelter wearing Myra's heat wrap. She was alive, but the wrap would not last forever. One guard grabbed the weaving house latch. Bryn suddenly stepped in front of him. "Move," the guard said. Bryn's whole body shook. "No, you were ready to sign." "I wanted my child to live," Bryn said. The guard stepped closer. Bryn did not move. He looked toward the shelter where his daughter was still breathing, and something inside him settled. Orvin had not been saving her. Orvin had been buying his fear. "I'm still afraid," Bryn said. "That is not the same as being yours." The guard shoved him. Bryn fell, then rose with 3 other villagers beside him. They were not trying to win a battle. They were holding a door, holding a few more minutes, and holding the proof that the company had lied. Garrett was not winning the storm alone. The village was buying him time. Sava struck the guard's weapon mount with her cane hard enough to knock it sideways. The square erupted into motion, not a battle of soldiers, but a struggle of people refusing to move from their own door. Below ground, Garrett turned the final wheel. Nothing happened. For 3 long seconds, the chamber stayed cold. Garrett closed his eyes. He thought of every failed repair and every camp where he had arrived too late. He thought of every face that had looked at him as if a wrench in his hand meant he could bargain with fate. Then the wall beneath his palm warmed. Not much. Not enough to celebrate. Enough to be real. The boy at the bell shouted from the tunnel mouth. Heat in the lower passage. Mira heard him and ran to the weaving house. Hold the wraps on the shelter walls, she called. Do not let the weak places freeze. The warmth moved slowly, like an old animal waking. It reached the children's house first. A little girl placed her hand against the stone wall and stared. The wall is breathing, she whispered. Her mother sobbed. Garrett tried to stand and nearly fell. He had to stay conscious for one more task. The company lock still held hidden proof. If Orvin erased it, the village might survive the storm but lose the truth. The proof could show that Vera Coldworks had closed the old system, hidden it, and charged the village for heat that was already theirs. Garrett opened the cover with shaking hands. Sava, he called through the tunnel line. We need the proof now. The old leader sent the boy, who sent Mira, who sent Rel. Rel knelt beside the lock, breathing hard from the stairs. Her old fingers hovered above the small marks inside the metal. I cannot see it well, Rel said. You do not need to see, Garrett said. Feel the marks. 3 short, 1 long, 2 smooth. Rel placed her fingers on the surface. Her hands had trembled over the bolts, but now they slowed. She read the grooves as if the lock were a strip of woven count. Like winter braid, she whispered. Yes, Garrett said. Exactly. Above ground, Orvin realized what they were doing. He pushed past his guards and entered the drying house himself. By the time he reached the chamber, Mira stood beside the open lock with the scarf spread near it. The scarf pattern matched the old heat map, glowing weakly on the panel. Rel held the copied proof in both hands. Orvin lifted his control slate. Step away. Garrett was on the floor now, back against the pipe, face pale with cold. He could not stop Orvin by force. Mira did not move. This system belongs to Tavern Hollow, she said. It belongs to whoever can maintain it. Then you lost it, Sava said from the stairs. Behind her stood Bren, bleeding from the lip and half the village. Orvin looked at them, and for the first time he seemed truly confused. Not afraid of Garrett, not afraid of a weapon. He was confused that the people he had measured as cold, hungry, divided, and manageable were standing together in a chamber he had taught them to forget. Garrett spoke from the floor. His voice was rough. You misread the repair. Orvin looked down at him. I was never the system, Garrett said. I was the first tool they picked back up. No one in the chamber spoke for a moment. Then the heat deepened in the walls. The storm lasted through the night and most of the next day. Tavern Hollow did not become comfortable. No one took off their coats. No one forgot hunger. But no child froze. No elder was carried into the snow. No parent signed away a child for a crate of heat. When the sky finally cleared, the village looked damaged and alive. Steam rose from vents that had been dead for years. People walked carefully through the lanes, touching warm walls like they were greeting old relatives. Garrett woke in the children's house with bandaged hands and Mira sitting beside him. Someone had put one of her heat wraps over his chest. You should not have taken your cart apart alone, she said. His voice was dry. Good morning to you too. It is afternoon. Then I slept well. You nearly did not wake. Garrett looked toward the window. Children were carrying sorted bolts in little baskets. Bren was helping repair a brace near the pump. Sava stood in the square with a slate in her hand. Did the proof get out? Mira nodded. The outer settlement accord received it before Orvin could block the uplink. They're sending inspectors. Garrett closed his eyes. Good. That is all. For now. She studied him. You always make big things sound small. No, I make small things first. Big things are usually too heavy to lift all at once. Mira looked at his bandaged hands. That is what is different about you, Garrett Hale. He opened his eyes. She continued. We thought you were too poor to help because you had nothing to give. But you kept giving the things no one counts. Time, skill, patience, the part from your card, the choice not to own what you repaired. The inspectors arrived 2 days later in a plain gray shuttle marked with the seal of the Outer Settlement Accord. They were not heroes. They were tired officials with recording drones, legal authority, and warm boots. That was enough. The copied proof showed that Vera Coldworks had locked Tavern Hollow's old heat system 12 years before. It showed that the company had called the system dead while billing the village for emergency heat. It also showed that the labor contracts had been tied to a shortage the company had helped create. Orvancade was removed from authority before sunset. 5 days later, the first workers came home. Not all of them. That truth entered the village like a second storm, quieter and crueler. Some families received living sons, brothers, and fathers. Some received records. Some received nothing but confirmed dates. Mira received Talon's final report. He had died in a tunnel collapse 3 winters earlier. He had not deserted. He had not forgotten her. The report said he held a pressured door open long enough for 7 younger workers to crawl out. Mira read it in the weaving house. Garrett sat nearby, but did not speak. There was no repair for that kind of wound. There was only witness. He was still protecting people, she said at last. Yes. They made us think he vanished because he did not care. Garrett's throat tightened. That is how systems like that survive. They take people, then take the story of them too. Mira folded the report carefully and placed it beside her mother's cloth. Then we will keep the story. Spring on Nerith was not warm. It only became less deadly. Tavern Hollow did not become rich. Its roofs still leaked, its food stores were still thin, and every repair had to be earned by tired hands. But survival had changed the village because truth had changed it first. The truth did not bring everyone home. It did not erase hunger, grief, or the winters already stolen. But it gave Tavern Hollow back its memory, and memory became a kind of shelter. The weaving house became a workshop and a school. Children learned the old patterns and the new heat routes together. Elders taught symbols they had thought were only decorative. Bryn Ara became the strictest pipe inspector in the village, which surprised no one once they thought about it. Mira stood beside Garrett's cart with a folded coat in her arms. The cart could move again, if slowly. It would never be what it had been before, but neither would Garrett. The coat in Myra's arms was not an old heat wrap. It was real and heavy, woven from frost reed, silver fiber, and narrow bands of reclaimed metal. Across the shoulders ran the old map pattern, the same one her mother had carried, but changed. The lines no longer ended at blocked gates. They opened outward, toward the roads beyond Tavern Hollow. Garrett touched the sleeve, but did not take it. I cannot pay for this. Myra's expression softened. It is not a debt. I do not want the village thinking they owe me. We do not owe you. She placed the coat in his hands. We remember you. That was harder for him to answer. Savarin came from the square, leaning on her cane. Around her, the village moved with a new rhythm. Not easy, not safe, but alive in a way it had not been when Garrett arrived. The western settlement sent word, Savas said. Their old vents match a border pattern from our 3rd winter cloth. We are sending Mira and Bren to look. Garrett smiled faintly. Bren will enjoy telling them their bolts are wrong. He already prepared a speech. Mira looked at Garrett. We could use another mechanic. Garrett looked at his cart. The road south was open. There would always be another broken pump, another hungry camp, another place where people had been told survival belonged to someone else. But Tavern Hollow had given him soup when soup was scarce. It had given him work when trust was scarcer. It had taken his broken knowledge and made it part of something larger than leaving. You do not need me to stay, he said. Mira stepped closer. No, that is why I am asking. The answer settled in him slowly, like heat through old stone. Garrett put on the coat. Across the village, children ran past the vents, laughing at steam that rose from the ground their grandparents had thought was dead. Bryn shouted at them to stay away from the pressure caps. Sava pretended not to smile. Mira watched Garrett with the patient strength of someone who had learned that hope was not always a trap. When the inspectors wrote their report, they called the Tavern Hollow event a local heat recovery led by community action and outside technical help. It was accurate enough for people who had not been there. The villagers told it more simply. They said a poor human came to their gate with a broken cart and empty hands. They said they almost turned him away because they believed help had to arrive warm, clean, funded, and powerful. But Garrett Hale did not come to replace Tavern Hollow. He fixed one warm room. He helped Mira recognize the map her family had carried. He gave what he could, even when what he had looked too small to matter. Then the village stood with him and did the rest. When Garrett Hale first came to Tavern Hollow, they thought he was too poor to help anyone. By the end, they understood something deeper. He had not saved them by becoming stronger than their community. He had helped their community remember its own strength. Tavern Hollow survived because one stranger started with one broken heater and because a village that had been taught to kneel chose to stand again. Thank you so much for listening to this story. If it moved you, please like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe for more emotional science fiction stories. This channel is about courage, dignity, and ordinary people doing what they can. If you know someone who enjoys heartfelt science fiction, please share this story with them. Your support helps this channel grow and helps me keep bringing meaningful stories from the heart. Until the next story, take care of yourself, stay kind, and remember this. Sometimes the greatest gift is not rescue. It is helping someone stand again.